but I've probably given enough preamble without saying who I am, or allowing Chris to introduce himself as well. So if I have not had the pleasure to meet you all yet, my name's Dr. Nic Rorrer, but please just call me Nick. And I currently serve as the fraternity's 50th national president. I originally hail from the Eta Beta chapter at Virginia Tech, and also have a strong affiliation with the Xi chapter at the Colorado School of Mines, where I serve as chapter sponsor, and is where I got my doctoral degree in chemical engineering. So if there's ever a point where I struggle or fumble over my words, just blame it on the fact that I am indeed a chemical engineer in all senses of the word. But Chris, go ahead.
Hey everyone, my name is Chris Curran from the Beta Omicron chapter at Arizona State University. It's good to see so many of you all here and look forward to meeting with you all and hearing some of your thoughts in the chats.
Sweet. Yes. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Kristen. And let's get going because we know it's band camp season. We know people are busy, all those things. So we're going to dive right on in. That being said, as we go through this, I will try to look at the chat some. Um, Yes, just sign up for committees. I will be able to, I'll try to look at the chat some like I clearly just did. But please stop us, ask questions, all that stuff as we go along. But like Kristen said, tonight's session is really about opus and chapter planning. So this is something that should be relevant to every chapter member, and some kind of great discussions we can have. That being said, even though the title is opus and chapter planning, we are going to start this a little bit in reverse. So I'm going to take some of the chapter planning side of things, and then Chris will take the Opus side of things. By the way, the first quiz question on the Opus is, does anyone know what Opus actually stands for? I'm very curious to see what people think for that one, but that is a far way away from where we are now. So diving right in, I'm going to start talking about staying organized and setting goals. So, how can you, as a brother, regardless of your officer, be it president, vice president, treasurer, historian, whatever it is, how can you stay organized and set goals for both yourself as an officer and for your chapter broadly? And so I think we have a easy answer for this is really it's about striving for your highest, right? So we have a couple of slides on this. It's not just that's the one answer, but your chapter functions best when you have a clear understanding of your own systems and expectations and how you function as an individual. So this is going to be a little bit more of an open-ended chat, but my question for you all are what are some ways that you can strive for your highest as a chapter member? Please toss them in the chat if the spirit so moves anyone and they want to raise their hand and come off mute and answer that as well. But yeah, what are some ways that you as a chapter member can, strive for your highest and have a clear understanding of your own expectations? Jalen, do you want to come off mute and share your answer?
Yes, no problem at all. How y'all doing? My name is Jalen Braithwaite. I hail from the 8 Iota chapter here at Bethune-Cookman University. And some ways that we do to try and strive for the highest and just help one another out is realistically just being there in all facets of the word and just always, striving for the motto. We understand, just like right now, there's band camp. Our current chapter president, he's head drum major, and they're doing what they have to do for freshman camp. So we made sure that we had brothers designated to be here for these things so we can support each other, pass along information, and just always being there for each other. Whereas fraternally, in the band, or just honestly within friendships, sometimes you hungry after band practice and you don't got it, but your LB does. So that's just what we try to do.
Absolutely love it. Yeah, I think that's really great. And that goes to some of the answers that we're getting in the chat, right? We saw goal setting come in as a clear one, communicating clearly and honestly. I think I have a bunch of friends, and we know that we need to communicate when one of us is about to get hangry, because if someone gets hangry, it ain't going to be good for anyone involved, right? I am a huge believer in breaking bread as friends, as a chapter, whatever it is. So I think that's even part of communication itself. Working together as a team, absolutely, is one of those. Maintaining a positive attitude, setting clear goals, making sure that our decisions are about betterment of our community. All these are great answers. So some of the ones that we've tossed on the slides are maybe a little different, maybe a little bit more focused on some of the stuff, but it is about finding ways that you can really help set those goals and communicate broadly. So first and foremost, if you're a chapter officer or even a chapter member, you should familiarize yourself with key chapter documents and transition documents, right? If you just became treasurer and your big brother was treasurer before you should communicate clearly with them about that through transition documents about what you need to know and what are the chapter documents you need to know in that base. The next is to reflect on your expectations for chapter communication and accountability. I think this is a big one. Like, you all toss communication into the chat a lot. And I think communication is always a funny word because I bet you all money, if you go to district convention this upcoming year, you will hear a lot of your district officers run on this platform of increasing or broadening or strengthening communication. I have been in this fraternity for, as I was telling Kristen at the top of this, about half my life now, which is horrifying to say that. But I can tell you, most people ran. When I was secretary treasurer, I ran on the idea of how can we increase communication amongst our chapters. But I think the big word I want to hit on here is reflect on your expectations for communications, right? Does your chapter have a policy where if an email sent out, you should respond to that email within 24 hours? Does your chapter have a policy where, where you do votes over email and they happen in a certain way? President Coe would often call these what are the rules of engagement? And we had them internally as a council, but we also had to figure out what our rules of engagements were with Tau Beta Sigma. And I think that what is your expectations for communication is really the key word in this sentence itself. The other one, decide on self-care techniques. We've already talked about food. I haven't ate dinner yet, so I'm probably going to say food a lot. And for those of you who saw my founder circle talk at NatCon, where I for some reason said 2 chicken tacos in the middle of that talk, that might happen this evening. We're making smash burgers this evening though, so that will be the key word. But figure out what your self-care techniques are. You cannot strive for your highest unless you're taking care of yourself. And the one thing I want to say is, like, my soapbox is figure out what your self-care techniques are, but also figure out, what's your basic care techniques, right? What is the pattern you have to have in your life to make sure you're having your basic needs met? And then what are the self-care needs that go beyond that? Because fact of the matter is, if you can't take care of yourself, how can you take care of a team? And then finally, set boundaries. Um, sorry, and be proactive about protecting yourself from burnout. Burnout's a very real thing. I'll be honest with you all, I'm facing burnout in my workplace right now. I work for a government contractor. I think that's all that needs to be said on that situation. But I think when you think about how do you set boundaries and you protect yourself from burnout, it might be that after 8 p.m., it's not school time, it's not Kappa time, it's watch TV time, whatever that is, right? This goes a little bit to that self-care that you have to figure out what works for yourself. I will tell you, after 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, it is no longer fraternity or work time for me, which is why I mentioned that one. So, along with kind of striving for your highest, you have to really have some goal setting, which this is one of those ones that was kind of tossed up in the chat itself. And so that was tossed up in the chat itself was setting goals. And our favorite way to talk about setting goals as a fraternity is to talk about SMART goals or SMARTY goals. And really today we're just going to start with the idea of what are SMART goals. So SMART itself, if you can't tell from all the periods, is actually an acronym. And it stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. Most of y'all are currently in college. I'm going to let you know, once you go into the workplace, your work is going to make you set SMART goals for everything. For those of us who are like, as an engineer myself, we have to set SMART goals around like process performance metrics or material performance metrics, right? Like, you could be doing some code and it could be have this code run in this fastest speed, right? Things that are measurable. So, like, what is that number you're going to get, right? So, for a chapter, are you going to fundraise $500 this year? Are you going to initiate 5 members this year? That measurable is that number, and that time bound is this year. And so, that's one of those things that when you are thinking about goal planning as a chapter, you should really focus on making some SMART goals. These SMART goals should be both short term and long term. So, what are you going to do this semester? What are you going to, do recruitment wise? What are you going to do fundraiser wise? But then long term, where do you all want to be at the end of the year? I think, when I was a chapter, when I was in college, I came from a small chapter, and we were always worried that like we would graduate one class away and like we would no longer have like a chapter. And it was our biggest worry. So recruitment was always our biggest focus, and we recruited both semesters. And so we said, hey, we're going to recruit 2 members in the fall, and we're going to try to recruit 6 members in the spring. And that's like kind of what always our goals were. And our long-term goals, we eventually want it to be a chapter of 25 members. Other ones kind of with SMART goals is that you should have goals as a chapter, but you should also have goals as individual officers, right? So as a chapter, it might be we want to have $2,000 in our bank account. But your treasurer might have the goal of saying, well, if we want to have $2,000 in our bank account, we really need to do a $500 fundraiser, right? And so you should talk about your goals openly and you should provide feedback on goals and be open to feedback. I think a lot of us, when we put goals out there, we get very attached to what we wrote and we want it to stay. But really, it helps to get feedback because that will often kind of help us figure out if a goal itself is realistic. The next is, as you're sharing goals with your officers or kind of your smaller group, is that you should set these goals with your chapter. If you now have a goal as a chapter to have 100 service hours this year, and you have never done more than 50 service hours, and chapter members have been thinking that was quite a lot of work, this is also going to help you figure out, is that a realistic goal? And is it a goal that you can get buy-in? I think, my guess is most of the people on tonight's call are going to be officers of some sort. If you aren't an officer, I'm super happy you're here, and I do actually fully mean that. Um, Hopefully you'll be an officer one day, but leadership doesn't require a title either. But it's great to have you here. But if you can't get buy-in beyond your officers, you're not going to be an efficient or functioning chapter. And at the end of the day, people might not be having fun. Um, and then the next one is, once you have goals, you should plan action steps on how you're going to reach this, right? I talked about this with the fundraising example. If your goal is to have $2,000 in the bank account by the end of the year and you want to do a $500 fundraiser, well, how do you execute that fundraiser? What is that fundraiser? If that fundraiser is selling, I'm not a huge fan of bake sales, to be honest. Not always the best fundraisers, but if it's you're going to do a big kind of Valentine's Day delivery gram because you think that could work really well, how's that going to work? What's the advertising steps going to be? And you can really break this down onto what are the steps we need to accomplish that goal itself. So that's kind of an introduction to what SMART goals are, and you've already seen the transition to the next slide. But one of the things we've been doing as a national organization is helping our chapters have goals themselves. And so as a national organization, we've introduced the concept last year of Crown Pearl goals. And this is something that we are continuing broadly as an organization. Hopefully you all saw in the newsletter and on Instagram, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, us announcing what the Crown Pearl goals for this year. And really what the Crown Pearl goals are designed to do is they're designed to give chapters SMART goals across multiple kind of areas itself that they can really focus on developing as a chapter. The big thing though that we want to recognize is that you don't have to achieve every goal. I love Kappa Kappa Psi. I love the motto striving for the highest. Striving for the highest, though, sometimes, if not taken well, can be a little toxic, right? Striving for the highest, though, at the end of the day, does not mean being perfect. It means attaining progress, not perfection. And so that's why we will be giving chapters 15 goals throughout the year, but we want you all to get just 10 of these goals. And if you get 10 of these goals, we will recognize you as a Crown Pearl chapter. Now, as I said in the Instagram post, I want you all to get more goals. I want you all to be like Eta Iota or Delta Iota, who somehow I did not expect any chapter to get all 15, but got all 15 last biennium, right? So let's see what chapters can get all 15 this year as well. But really, I will celebrate any chapter who makes progress on these. Even if you don't get all 10, but you got two more than last year, that's something that we want to celebrate as an organization. And so, with all that preamble aside about striving for the highest, meaning progress, not perfection, I'm going to introduce the Crown Pearl goals to you all if you have not seen them yet. So, the first set of goals are our CHOPS goals. So, these are ones around chapter operations. And so these are things like submitting your chapter personnel report on time, submitting your curriculum calendar on time. I've actually already seen a lot of curriculum calendars on time. So even though I'm calling tonight the first chance to earn your Crown Pearl goal, a lot of chapters are already getting their curriculum calendars in and they're getting that Crown Pearl goal. Submit your initiate registration forms in on time. Chris will have a slide later that talks about all the steps you have to do to get that initiate registration form in on time. It's a multi-step process. Have at least one chapter member attend a CHOPShop in the fall. I figure some of you are from the same chapter, but the really awesome thing tonight is we have 40 plus of y'all that I saw before I started doing screen shares who are getting your chapter their first Crown Pearl goal. You are 1/10 of the way there, possibly even before your semester starts. So you all deserve a round of applause. I think it's amazing that so many of you all are here tonight. I love it. It warms my heart, to be honest. And then finally, we will have chop shops in the spring as well. Have a chapter member attend at least one chop shop in the spring. Besides the CHOPS goals, we also have other goals. So the next set of goals are Strive for Five goals. So the Strive for Five initiative was something that was started during Jess Lee's biennium, and it was really thinking about how can we as an organization grow. Five is a number that pops up a lot in our organization. Um, and so the goals we've given you all for this year are things of creating an annual plan with your DOB and sponsor by October 15th. We'll call out a couple of those resources in a couple slides that you can do that. But this is just making a calendar for the year. Host an event that benefits all members of your band. Some of you all might be doing this in the next couple weeks with band camp, right? Like if you are having a cookout for your band, that is an event that benefits all members of your band. Submit pictures of that, submit a write-up of that to the submittal form, which is in emails and other things, and you will get that Crown Pearl goal. Possibly my favorite ones is have at least one chapter officer complete the level 1 of the Founder Circle. The Founder Circle is a program that's designed to give you skills beyond the road to wisdom. And so that's why we're pushing level 1 a lot this year, and we'll also be pushing level 2 a little bit as well. Big one, initiate at least 5 people. Um, this is just big for the organization as a whole. Like, we are an organization that does rely on student dues, but we're an organization that has lessened members since the pandemic, and we want to grow to the sizes that we once were. We've been doing a great job getting some amazing chapters in. Late next week, you will see the official announcement of the 6 new chapters that we're going to this fall, which is fantastic. But we also want to see your chapters grow in members as well. And then finally, create a budget for your chapter and share it with your district council. Yeah, that one should be fairly easy. Ideally, you are making a budget for your chapter anyway, as you are going up to these dues discussions. And so do that. But if you need helps with resources, we've shared some of those in the last newsletter, and things like the Treasurer's CHOPShop will also help with that as well. And then finally, national brand. So, as I said in my entry speech as national president, and as hopefully you all saw last biennium, we really started to celebrate and uplift the idea of the chapter um, of the Kappa Kappa Psi journey. And in that, we had our national months of a bunch of different things. The first one was the national month of service, which will be starting in September. During September, we're going to ask you to highlight a service project and also be on the lookout for the special VPSA chat reboot that JP Davis is going to be doing shortly. In the month of musicianship, we really want to see your chapter record a video of you all singing the fraternity song. The fraternity has 2 beautiful songs, the fraternity hymn, which I think we all love dearly, but we also have a fraternity song. So we want to uplift that a little bit more this month of musicianship. In February, we'll be having some intro sessions about the Founder Circle to introduce you all to this program. So just like this CHOPShop, we're encouraging you all to attend one of those sessions in February. And then big thing is we want to see you all during the month of Brotherhood at District Convention. If you all weren't able to make NatCon, it's just a truly special thing when we can have these large scale family reunions. To some extent, I call Cap Cap Psi a family way too much, but we hope that you will join us at one of our district or national events then. And then finally, we might change up that last one, but one of the options for the national brand is to submit your chapter's graduating senior report in the month of June as well. I think Kristen has been on top of it and answering the questions, but I hope you do like the new event registration we did for this, because it makes it super easy for us to take attendance. That yes, you do get your Crown Pearl goal just by signing in with your Zoom link tonight while the recording is running. So that's a lot of SMART goals. And as we talked with some SMART goals, we said, hey, you can have goals, but you can have the greatest ambitions, but if you are not planning and preparing yourself, you might not reach those goals. And so one of those things we talk a lot about with making SMART goals is strategic planning, because they really go hand in hand. And so as you have these goals, you need to think about how your goals as an individual feed into the chapter's larger plan and how you are going to take steps to get towards those goals. So, as a chapter, you should decide on 2 to 3 priorities per year. You can have more goals, but you need to determine where you're going to start, right? Everyone might have a goal. Like, I remember when I was a chapter officer, the historian always had a goal to update our scrapbooks to be digital. I was initiated 18 years ago. We still use scrapbooks. We used to have a Facebook page that was just a fake profile for our scrapbooks. It was awful. Do not recommend. And update our board in the music hall. Not necessarily the goals that, like, great individual officer goals, and they did accomplish those, but not necessarily the goals that we want to see kind of advancing our chapter. But like I said, you can have more goals than that, but you had to determine where to start. And as I said from my personal stories, most of our goals were always focused on recruitment. Consider what your strengths and weaknesses are as a chapter. We have 215 great chapters in this organization, and we have 215 very diverse chapters in all senses of the word. Each chapter is going to have different strengths and different weaknesses. Some of those are borne out by what your band program is. Like, are you at a D1 school where you have a large football program and stuff like that? Or are you at a school with no music majors whatsoever? You have to consider what your strengths and weaknesses are as a chapter, because that's going to help you define what those goals are. And then finally, refer back to our missions and purposes as an organization. Ultimately, Kappa Kappa Psi is trying to advance the college and university band movement because we believe bands make better people. We want to change the world by making better people. So, how do your goals align with making a better band program, align with making better brothers, and align with making better leaders? And then create opportunities to evaluate your progress and pivot as needed. So, I thought the next slide was a different one. We'll come back to some of this with strategic planning in a second. But one of those things I wanted to say is we said talk about your strengths and weaknesses as a chapter. And one of the best ways to do this is a SWOT analysis. So, fun thing about a SWOT analysis, there are a million different resources for this online. Go Google it, go do this activity as a chapter. It's great. Within the inner circle, which is one of the best resources we offer to you all as a fraternity, there's a bunch of SWOT resources as well. Go use them, go figure out things to do. But what does SWOT mean? Well, SWOT means strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And taking your chapter through a SWOT analysis, sorry, I just want to check the next slide. Taking your chapter through a SWOT analysis is something that can really help your chapter figure out what you should do this next year, especially focusing on that opportunities things. But this is a thing where you can get a large room, you can put 4 sticky notes in different corners of the room, and you can have people say, what do we think our strengths are as a chapter? What do we think our weaknesses are as a chapter? What do we think our opportunities are as a chapter? And what are our threats? The strengths, those are things what we're good at. If you're a large chapter, one of your strengths might be we have a lot of people, so we can execute a lot of projects. Granted, that could also be a weakness, right? We have a lot of people, it's hard to coordinate. Same thing for a small chapter. Your strength can be like, we're really close knit, we're a lot of hard workers, it's easy to coordinate us. The weakness could be we can't do as many chapter projects as we want to because of the size of our chapter. So from that, you might identify, hey, recruitment is a great goal for us as a chapter. Other things you might look at, opportunities, right? What are your opportunities as a chapter? Look outside your chapter. Be like, hey, this is the largest freshman class we've had. This would be a great point for us to grow our opportunity, grow and recruit people. Or, hey, the band this year is traveling to these locations. Wouldn't it be great if we could do a service project that helps the band get to those locations, fundraiser that helps the band get to those locations, or a service project that benefits that local community? Look at what your opportunities are and allow that to define your year. The one that I actually want to kind of call out as the most important one here, though, is threats. And I want to call this out as one of the most important ones because I think this is a category that we all spend a lot of time in. So, like, threats, the world around us. And like I say that like in a broad sense, like not being political or anything like that, but like that is what threats usually are. It is things you can't control, right? You can't control if your university is increasing tuition by 20% next year. You can't control that, less kids are in high school band. You can't control that, your state is merging a lot of universities and cutting band programs. You can see those as opportunities and you can try to do stuff like that. But why I think threats is such an important category to identify in SWOT analysis, it's also the place where you should not be putting your time and energies or your stresses, right? If you're like, wow, we can't recruit people because tuition's got so expensive, it's not worth your time to try to go to student council meetings and try to drive down tuition. Um, as much as like that might sound just cut and dry, it's not. It's not worth your time or your anxiety. Like, don't feed that demon that is those threats, I think is the big thing I'm trying to say here. So when you're doing SWOT analysis, really look at those strengths, look at those weaknesses, and look at those opportunities, right? Because within each one of the strength, weaknesses, and opportunities are places you can devote your energy to have an effect as a chapter. That threats, that is the area that you should be cognizant of, and you should realize that it does have an effect on your chapter and on you as an organization. But you can also recognize that that is not a place where you need to spend too much of your energy and waste your energies. So that was my little soapbox that I was not expecting to get on so strong, but hey, if you've met me, that's what I do. Um, so I've talked for too much. So there are three priorities on this slide that I already have hidden for you all. But in the chat, can you toss out kind of what do you all think are some good priorities for your chapters this year or really in a given year? Also, Kristen, thank you for answering things in the chat. Membership, absolutely. Recruitment from the double Trevor Jenkins. Ooh, I love what Anna or Anna, sorry if I mispronounced your name, tossed in, right? Recruiting more from the music school. That might be a place where you typically don't get members from. Bonding as brothers, absolutely. Some chapters will sometimes have the problem of just like being more of a resume thing, and they don't always, bond together. So I think that's great. Have meals together, is my big thing. Delaney, service projects, absolutely. Same with Rebecca. Um, Antonia like points out that they had a growth spurt. And so now you're in as a different chapter, right? So you have to figure out how you function as a big chapter. That is a great one to kind of really make goals and priorities around. Exposure to local communities. Absolutely, Ezekiel. Fundraising. Love to see it. I mean, I see Delaney also answered fundraising. I was like, I bet your sec treasures love to see that too from the district level. Recruitment of non-marching band members, absolutely. Oh, there's a whole slide later on community and university engagement. That one's great. Um, Scholarship, absolutely. Hey, there's this thing called the AEA scholarship for the fraternity. You all should apply. It gives you a decent amount of money. Um, yeah, apply for that. Leadership development, I love to see it. Speaks to my heart. Continuing membership education, love to see it. Connecting with other organizations, right? That's our fifth purpose. Interpersonal relations. Uh, they are hard sometimes, but figuring out how to work them is very strong. I think that goes to brotherhood bonding. Have meals together. If your local village inn has a free pie night, that is one of the best things I saw the Xi chapter do. Free pie, everyone's fellowship grows. Fellowship with local chapters. Love this. Also, recruiting students to the band, right? I love that one. That one's a very hard and ambitious goal, but I love to see it. So, you all had a lot of great things on the list. I will say, as your national president, I have three priorities that I would love every chapter to focus on. That list was great. Everything on the list, absolutely fantastic. But recruitment, right? It's one of the Crown Pearl goals. Initiate at least 5 brothers. If you're initiating more than 5 brothers, do it. Keep doing it. But recruitment, absolutely a flagship service project, right? I think there's a lot of chapters. I came from one of these chapters where like we do service to the bands. I woke up every Saturday and Sunday morning at 8 a.m., regardless of what time I went to bed, to move timpani all the way across Virginia Tech's campus, rolling timpani across. It's what we did, and we loaded up a truck. We might go home and nap afterwards, but that's what we did as Eta Beta. It is a great service. It is very appreciated by our university band. But what became better and how we elevated as an organization is when we had that flagship service project where it's like, this is what we do as a band. Look at this amazing thing we do. I mean, we got to see some of our top chapters and most improved chapters called out for things like a flagship service project. And then a flagship fundraising project. I'm the sponsor of the Xi chapter of the Colorado School of Mines. They have a fundraiser, which they can do in the state of Colorado, which is a 50-50 drawing. They make like $10,000 off that a season. They just walk around with tickets and like, granted, they give out $10,000, but in the state of Colorado, it's legal to do 50-50 drawings. There are a lot of things you can find that might be really good money incomes for your chapters. I think it's Theta Nu, and I think that's in Louisiana. I think they run a bingo hall, which like they only have to have their brothers volunteer for a couple hours, but also they rake and bank. So really for your chapters, you should just be thinking about what is our flagship service project and what is our flagship fundraising project. Um, like Eta Beta did this too, selling fundraisers for the band, selling fundraisers for the band, selling gloves for the band is a very good fundraiser when people have to do that. Kristen, thank you so much for doing all the things in chat. That helps me out so much. Oh, did I go too far forward? Nope, I just didn't have as many transitions. So I'm going to try to speak faster. so Chris can get to the Opus section. But with all goals, timing is key, right? I have said this a lot throughout it, but as you have goals and as you work through the year, maintain an awareness of all deadlines. Don't wait last minute to start paperwork and projects. This is why I've heard a lot of feedback that it's slightly confusing, but this is why we've changed the language around kind of when CPRs are due. We're saying they're due on September 1st for semester schools, and they're late after September 30th. And that's because we had a lot of people trying to get them in on the last day, and then a lot of people having them be late. We we do not want to charge late fees to chapters as a national organization. We do need our paperwork to be on time, though, so we can function as a national organization, which is why late fees exist. It's also why we lowered late fees from 25% to 10%, because we don't want to charge you all dramatic late fees. So don't wait to last minute to start paperwork or projects. Create a chapter calendar. This is the best thing you can do. If it's using a Google Calendar, great. If it's just using you can ask Kristen. She's seen my awful brainchild of an Excel document where I have the next 105 weeks for the next biennium platted out, where it's like, this is what committees are doing at this time. Make a calendar that works for you to get to these deadlines. Leave ample time for input from your sponsor and your DOBs. Your sponsor and your DOBs, they love your chapters. However, they are doing a lot more. So please give them like a week or two to get through paperwork and things. And then also, if more than one person is working on a form, ensure that there's time to proofread it to make sure it's accurate. Um, I've had many examples in my life where multiple people are working collaboratively on a form, and it leads to something that is a little bit of a Frankenstein monster. Or Frankenstein was the scientist, the monster was the monster, so Frankenstein's monster at the end of the day. But one of those ways that we'll share a slide at the very end that we try to help you all with timing is through calendars. So in the chapter resource folder, which there'll be a link for this shared at the end of this presentation, we have content calendars for like your president, your service person, which says here are the things you should be doing across the different months. So hopefully that is a resource that will help you all throughout the year. So last couple slides for me. The next one is on officer and chapter relations. So one of the big things to note is as we work in chapters, we have to make sure that we have different working relationships and personal relationships. Kappa Psi is an all gender fraternity. We're also a quite diverse fraternity. So people sometimes date in chapters. Don't let that go into chapter business. Just going to say it out front. Sometimes people date across KK and TDS. When I was active, called it a lot of drama. Really separate those personal and those working relationships. Um, and I think the big thing is ensure that personal conflicts do not affect chapter operations and chapter business, but also don't allow chapter business and chapter operations to affect personal relationships. Everyone is going to have a different way they approach a project. I am very bullheaded when I work through things. Um, that is fine. Just because I tell someone I don't like their approach on something does not mean I don't like them as a person. It's just I don't like the way they're taking an approach. Most of the time, I love them as a person, and especially if I can have that discourse with them, it's truly amazing. That being said, you should always make sure you are fostering an environment where all parties feel heard and understood. Your chapter meetings should make sure they're giving ample time for people to ask questions, to challenge things, but then also for people to be able to explain. Like I said, I think one of the biggest issues we sometimes see when working with chapters is they're having these conversations and whatnot, but people will get upset or take offense because people are asking questions about their project and they're like, oh, but isn't it already like, people are like, oh, this is perfect. And the fact of the matter is, like, we have to have that dialogue. I will say, like, for those of you who don't know, I am married to another member of the national leadership team, and he often reminds me of the fact that, Nick, not everyone is spending as much time doing Kappa Kappa Psi as you are. The things that make sense in your head might not make sense in our heads because we haven't seen them as well, right? And so that's why I always make sure as national president, I'm trying to create a time where people can ask questions, pokes holes in my logic, things like that. The big thing here, though, is focus on building trust rather than just shutting down criticism. Allow people to have those conversations, explain where you came from, thank people for their feedback. Clearly, I've talked about a lot about feedback, but make sure that you are inviting feedback. But at the end of the day, remember that actions are speaking louder than words, right? If you say, hey, Kristen, this has been a great plan for the chop shops. Like, let's just hypothetically put in this situation. If I'm like, Kristen, I care a lot about the chop shops. There are these things like I really want to invest in this next biennium. Please go get them. And then if I don't show up to a single one, are my actions saying I'm actually invested in this programming? No. That's why I'm here tonight. I would be here for more of them, but I also have work commitments in 2 weeks. That means I can't do those. But make sure that your actions, like when you support something, are speaking that language. And also make sure you're just not saying you're supporting something and then not. And I think that brings us beautifully into accountability. Accountability is one of those things that like we need to foster as an organization. And I will say, if you are an accountable person, you will have success post college when you go into the workplace. Maybe a little bit of a personal anecdote, but anyone who works with me, for me, whatever it is, I do lead a team of multiple people. They will always know that I will be the first person to accept blame for a project because I just want to move things on. I will say that has served me better in my career more than anything else. And usually people are like, you don't have to accept blame for that. I was like, I don't care. I want to move things forward. I can admit where I was wrong in this process and where it held us back. So let's keep going. And so being accountable is challenging, right? Saying I'm wrong, or like I even twitch saying those words. It felt weird coming out of my mouth as I was saying it. But when you can be held accountable, it's rewarding for both you and your brothers. I think Kirk says this a lot in his workshops, or sometimes as I call them, Kirk shops. I don't think he's heard me call them that yet, but I know Delaney and some other Zeta Chi brothers are here, so who knows? I might sneak up to him one day. But you can't lead a chapter if you don't show up, right? If I'm president of a chapter, or I guess I'm president of the national organization, if I'm not showing up to our meetings, I'm not leading our meetings whatsoever. And so I can't hold other people accountable or tell other people to show up if I don't show up myself. Accountability. Set deadlines and share what you're working on. Maybe just a little bit of a note from me being a professional in my workplace. When people are like, oh, yeah, it's making progress. That's never what I want to hear. I want to hear about how it's making progress. You know, what roadblocks are you hitting, right? Are you actually going to hit that deadline? Deadlines can be missed, but you have to share that progress and what you're working on. My favorite language. Create a brave space where it's okay to make mistakes and focus on improving the next time. I'm a huge believer that we should be using the language brave space over safe space because we can never guarantee safety, but we can, as brothers, try to create a space where people can feel brave to be their true, authentic selves. It is okay to make mistakes in this organization. It's actually, as a chapter sponsor, the one thing I say about Cap Psi that I love the most. This is a place where you can fail. This is a place where you can mess up. When I was an undergrad, I once scraped the side of a building with a moving truck that had all the instruments in there. I bleeped up, and my band director let me know I did. But it was one of those things that, like, Cap Psi creates that space where I can try, fail, and learn. And you all should feel like this is a space where you can try, fail, and learn. Focus on improving next time. What would I do different next time? Tell the cheerleading coach they need to move their car much earlier than I did. Um, and discuss how you all prefer to receive feedback, right? Some people do not like to be called out in front of everyone in front of a meeting. I personally prefer that. I hate one-on-one conversations. Um, but how do you preserve feedback or even reminders, right? So how do you want to do those things? Reminders via email, all that stuff. So my question for you all, and I think this is one of my last slides, but how do we navigate the difficult conversations around accountability? How do you all as a chapter navigate these conversations? And if someone wants to raise their hand and come up in the chat, you can as well. Oh, Kristen, you're amazing for doing all this stuff in the chat. I know I keep saying that, but it's also good to give positive feedback too. I'm trying to demonstrate what I preach. Go ahead, Jalen.
So how we do things, honestly, here at Cookman is really just in the way of our band director. If in a very constructive way, obviously, in a very constructive way, we just say, hey, this has to be done, or this is how we need to take care of this. In most cases, we try to first understand, well, hey, was it because you were in practice? Because luckily we have a lot of leadership in the band, and even if they're not leadership, they're in the music department, like music ed, general music, performance, all those things. So it's like, hey, was it a performance thing? Was it this? Do you have this coming up? Just trying to get understanding, and then making sure that with that understanding, we maintain that same accountability of, hey, this can't happen again, or let's kind of find some ways to better help to alleviate this in the future. So you don't got to take accountability for something bad, but we do address it as best as we can. Try to be direct, but respectful.
Love it. Antonia?
Hi, my name is Antonia. I hail from the Alpha Beta chapter in the North Central District. So when we navigate accountability, we kind of have to discuss if is it a personal matter or is it a chapter matter? Because if it's the entire chapter, that should be a chapter discussion. And if it's a specific brother, we discuss it one on one with the brother or brothers involved, and plus our president and sponsor if need be. And I feel like they hit it in the head of like, is it something that's going on in their lives, something that's going on that's not making them happy, and it's a lot of things, and it's a lot of the threats that happen in the world, like out of their control, or what could they have done if it wasn't like a major threat.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. Like one of my favorite concepts to talk a lot about with conversations is you have to right size the conversation. I just actually love that concept in life in general. But I think that's exactly what you're getting at. So thank you for that. A couple from the chat, then I'll move on. But like, Elijah says, have the hard conversations and remember we're brothers at the end of the day and it's all out of love, right? I think that's the thing. If you are giving feedback, you need to ask, why am I giving this person feedback? If that feedback is because I think it will make them a better person, then it's feedback that should be said. I'll be honest, I was reviewing some stuff for a brother today, and there was a point where I was like, do I want to give them this feedback? I was like, I do because I would be remiss if I didn't say it. And it's feedback that I think will elevate their work. I love what Bree said, call each other in, not out. Um, have the hard conversation, Caitlin, have the hard conversations about how we can do better. Um, sorry, moved. And how we can better support a person in the future, right? When I give a lot of feedback conversations, it's often, or honestly, when I have a lot of people, complain to me about a situation they're in, the big question I ask is, but how can I help you? We did a little skit at NLC kind of for our district leadership teams beforehand. And it was a very fun skit. Mark and I were acting as two chapter officers who were trying to pass accountability on and not really understand our duty. But at the end of the day, Denali was able to break that because she was able to say, hey, what can I do to help you? Or what help do you need next time, right? So I love all that. Um, what Emma said, remember that we're all here for the same goals. Allison and I, when we talk about joint relationships between Cap Psi and Tau Beta Sigma, I always say one of the big things is we are all passionate people. That is often why we butt heads, is because we all think we have the best path forward. It is amazing to work in organizations with such passionate people, but sometimes that causes the interpersonal relationships itself. Yeah, and absolutely address the issue with people present, but remember to keep it respectful. I will say one of my least favorite things, and my leadership training for work tells me not to do this, is the compliment sandwich. Do not use the compliment sandwich. Give feedback often. Give feedback when people are doing things well, right? I've called out Kristen multiple times in a good way for helping me answer these questions in the chat. Give feedback often. Give it both with the positive and give it with the, hey, it would be really better if you can do this differently next time. Why the compliment sandwich does not work is like, it can literally be like, hey, Chris, you're really good at using fonts in your minutes document, but I actually think your writing is a piece of flaming garbage and you should feel bad about yourself. But also, I like the Founder's Circle shirt you're wearing, right? Compliment sandwiches can devolve to something so petty so easily. So remember, feedback should be given often when things are going well. And I'm sorry y'all are just getting the Nic Rorrer show tonight, but also constructively when things need to be given better. Also, yes, make sure that you have hangouts outside of feedback, right? Think about the environments you're giving feedback in. Like if chapter meetings are always giving feedback to people, maybe chapter meetings aren't a fun place people want to go to. However, um if um if people are hangry, it's never going to work out. So maybe think about getting dinner together, or if your chapter meeting's like at 7, maybe be like, hey, who wants to run to McDonald's or the local dining hall before this meeting? Do stuff like that. Absolutely great responses in the chats. Um, I like what Lauren said, ending the chapter meeting with fuzzies. What Ada Beta used to do, which was my favorite thing, is we would pass the gavel around and we would just talk about how our week was doing because it would really humanize us as brothers and help create that brave space where we could have those conversations either way. Last couple slides for me. I know I've said that like 10 times now, but just a couple other things to think about when planning out your year. One is university relations. Your university has a lot of resources available to you. We've been talking a lot about accountability and interpersonal conflict. every university has something called an ombuds officer. So if you're navigating tough situations that like kind of go beyond interpersonal, um, reach out to your ombuds. They also have people who can help you navigate conversations if you think you need that, but they also have money. So one of those things are if you are able to register as a student organization each year, do it. Some chapters can't. The Alpha Iota chapter at CU Boulder can't because since we're an exclusive organization and we only recruit from the band, CU Boulder does not allow that chapter to register as a student organization, which sucks. Colorado School of Mines, they can register as student org, but if they want to get money from the student government, they would have to have all their banking be from the student government, and the student government would take the bank money back at the end of the year. That chapter makes $10,000 a year. It's not worth them to do as a chapter. So you have to make sure one, if you have to register as a student organization, register as a student organization. But some chapters might not allow it. But please, this is the perfect time of the year to make sure if you need to register as a student organization that you are. Review your requirements for membership intake, project approvals, and attendance expectations from student government meetings. I love that Kappa Kappa Psi has such a presence at HBCUs across the country. HBCUs have a lot more strict rules about recruitment and intake than we do at PWIs, right? So, I mean, I know my HBCU brothers on the call are probably very familiar with the university processes already, but every university is different, so you have to make sure you know what those are. We say the road to wisdom should be like a 6 to 8 week process, but if your university says otherwise, we will defer to university regulations. We just need to know that. There are a lot of resources that your university also offers. They probably have people in the leadership development office who will come give you all workshops if you want to. They also might give you on-campus rooms, office supplies, things like that. But also, they might give you money. There are some schools where their university will pay for them to go to district conventions. I wish that was every school. It's not always, but you never know if you don't look into this. So this is a great time of the year, especially as you're setting those goals about what you want to do, to look into how your university relations can help you. Chapter technology, this is just kind of a big one too. As you're planning out the year, think about what chapter technology you're going to use and find ways to streamline your operations and increase transparency. I'll be honest, I took over being national president of this fraternity about 3 weeks ago. One of the first things I did once I got access to that president@kkpsi.org email, I completely reorganized our Google Drive because it was non-functional at this point. It also used to still be under Marco's name, so I made sure it was under the president's name, which is why I did a lot of this stuff. But think about your digital infrastructure and how it's working for you all as a chapter. You all are probably a lot better with technology than I am at 35, 2 weeks from today, 36. But think about that. Think about how your chapter is file sharing. Do you use Google Drive? Do you use Dropbox, OneDrive, whatever it is? Think about how you use it. Make sure everyone has access to that at this time of year. Think about what you put in there. Like you should be putting in documents that matter to people. The agenda, minutes, chapter roster, constitution. These should be accessible to all brothers. Chapter communication. How are you talking as a chapter? Is it Slack, Discord, Group Spot, GroupMe, whatever it is? We did not have all these things when I was active, but you should think about how you communicate as a chapter and what are the best practices around that, right? We talked earlier about what are your communication standards? Should people respond to Discord messages as fast as they respond to email messages? You should have that expectation as a chapter and you should be clear around it. You should also think about how you're going to do event updates, right? Things change of the day. Is that going to be communicate, Slack, email, all that stuff? You should leverage what's already available to you in your university first, right? If your university uses, I have to use Microsoft Teams for work. I know not everyone loves that, but if it already uses that and that's provided to you as students and so is OneDrive, but you would have to pay for Dropbox, maybe use what's free first. And the big thing, regularly evaluate if your tools are meeting the chapter's actual needs. One of the phrases that a lot of us older heads in the fraternity will often say is do it once, it's always been done that way. Do it twice, it's tradition. Do it 3 times. Bohemian Makovsky brought it over on the Mayflower himself. So just remember, like, just because something's been done that way, especially with technology, does not mean it's going to be the best and serve you the best. So you have done it. You have survived a lot of Nic talking through his very strong opinions about chapter planning. If you did not see anything from my speech at NatCon, though, I am a big believer in preparation. I think it takes us very far. And I think once we understand our duties associated with preparation, we can really hit the heights. So I hope that was very beneficial for you all. But I also know there's a lot of confusion about Opus. So I'm very excited to get the chance to stop talking for a couple minutes and turn it over to my lovely colleague, Chris, to talk about Opus.
All right, now it's time for the fun stuff. So as great as strategic planning is, I know that some people join Kappa Kappa Psi for a bunch of different reasons. The service, the leadership, the brotherhood. I joined it for the Opus. So let's go to the next slide and we will get into an exciting discussion on Opus. So I want to start off with a little bit of a pop quiz. Sorry to start off my section with a quiz for you guys. So what does Opus stand for? Feel free to come off mute, throw it in the chat, and we'll see who can get closest. See, I see some thinking faces. I love this. Because we in Kappa Kappa Psi love our acronyms. Just in this session, you've heard about SMART goals, you've heard about the SWOT. Even Kappa Kappa Psi is written as KK and then the Psi. That's an acronym too, so they're all over the place.
Remember, I did tell you this question was coming up at the top of the chat.
I see we have the O stands for official. All right, I'll give you guys maybe 5 more seconds. I see some gears turning in the back of our heads. And Kristen, you can choose, or Nick, you can choose when to do the big reveal. Online personnel updating system. I like it. I like the guess. We have online processing and updating system. Emma said she thought it stood for operations.
So for the big reveal, oh, official paperwork user space. I like that.
That's pretty
I
good.
thought it was online portal and user system, but as Aaron Moore will constantly remind me, Opus stands for absolutely nothing. It is just what we call the platform itself. So back to you, Chris.
A little bit of a trick question for you guys, just trying to start off Opus on a high note. So now that we know what Opus isn't, let's take a second and talk a little bit about what Opus actually is. So Opus manages all our records for our chapters and for individual brothers. So these are things like your membership info, a history of your leadership positions, individual and chapter awards, and a couple other fun tidbits that if you're a historian, it would be really cool to bring to your chapter. Now, the coolest thing to me about Opus is that the records go back for decades. Last night I was looking through just to refresh myself on Opus, and I found awards in my home chapter 1 back in 1975. So it holds at least 5 decades worth of info, and it probably goes back even further than that. So it makes sure that we're working as one organization, that we're all on the same page. So we're working as one fraternity just across different campuses in different states. So on to the next slide, we have some of our key deadlines for Opus. So this is kind of a summary of everything we're going to be talking about going forward. So I'm not going to stay on it too long, but I encourage you maybe take some photos, send it to your chapter president, save it for yourself, just so we're always on top of the results. And so your chapter is expected to complete the deadlines on these forms by the listed deadlines. And like I said, we'll go through each one of them and talk about what they are and why we do them for the deadline. But for now, like I said, just take a photo and we'll go from there. So while you're doing that, I do want to turn your attention to the asterisk at the bottom, which reads, late fees are incurred if late. So these are items that you want to make sure your chapter is well aware of. I've seen several chapters, even when I was inactive, that face hundreds of dollars in late fees for delays in these items. And we want your funds to go to support your band programs, not to pay fees for silly mistakes and maybe misunderstanding the deadlines or submitting something a little bit late. So on to the next slide, we'll talk about the first one, the chapter personnel report. So this form is this is probably the first one you're going to be responsible for in your chapter. And this is where you update your membership statuses for brothers who are still in your chapter. It's how National knows who's active, inactive, conditional, and really to confirm there aren't any alumni still on your records or inactive brothers. So this form is going to be due September 1st for schools following a semester format, and October 1st for schools following a quarter-based system. Now, here's the key to this form that I think is the most important thing to call out. All actives, conditional, and associate brothers will need to log into Opus and read and acknowledge the policies. So if every brother listed on your form doesn't fill out the form by September 30th for a semester school, and I believe it is, going back in my individual slides, a little bit later than that for a semester school, or for a quarter school, you will be faced with a late fee, unfortunately. And it's going to be 10% on top of what you already paid. And that can be an unnecessarily hit to your finances. If you have with dues being $145 per brother, a chapter of 10 could potentially be paying $155 simply in late fees. If you're a larger chapter, you guys have 30 people, you could be hit with late fees of over $450. And that's not just dues, that's fees on top of dues. So we want to be sure nobody on this call and nobody watching this playback or any of your friends' chapters are subjected to this. So I highly encourage you to take some time, maybe at your first meeting, to all open Opus as a group, review the risk management policies, and hit submit together. That way your leadership team doesn't have to go through basically corralling people into filling out the forms.
Chris is 100% correct on that, and I'm going to hit the next slide for him. But the big thing I want to note is we can see when you logged into Opus. So if you swore that you logged into Opus on, March 31st and you did your acknowledgments, we have the timestamp. So like, yes, it is all recorded everywhere.
Yeah, so just be on top of it, be ahead so that you don't have one person lead to unnecessary fees for the chapter. And speaking of paying dues, so here are a couple different ways you can make a payment to national headquarters. So the first one is the old school way of sending a check or a money order to headquarters at the address listed there. But you also, if your chapter has a credit card, you can call headquarters and go that way. Or my personal recommendation is pay at the online address linked at the bottom of that screen. The online way takes the least amount of effort and you get an immediate response that your payment was submitted. We won't have anything accidentally lost in the mail or it gets late sent out. You can just be sure of with one payment that it's ready to go. On to the next slide, we have our second form, and this is pretty related to chapter personnel report, the chapter personnel update. So this lets you make any updates to membership statuses throughout the year. So you may have somebody who starts the year as active and maybe wants to go conditional or inactive or whatever the case may be. So this is the form you'll use to make that happen. Just keep in mind that you can't move somebody from inactive status to alumni status using this form. Now, as for the due date, there is no official due date for this form. And that's because there's no scheduled when somebody may decide to go inactive or to change their membership status. We just ask you to let our headquarters team know as soon as reasonably possible so that we have the information that's as up to date as possible and matches your records. So another quiz for you guys, since I know you guys love hearing about forms being talked to you guys for a while. So we have Nick here. Rumor has it this was his first day as national president. He hadn't logged on to Opus in a while since Opus even was created, and he's trying to log in right now. Can someone say why he might be having a mistake? And feel free to come off mute or throw it in the chat. So I see Madison got it. It's missing the .kkytbs. Now, I know I threw Nick under the bus just to kind of tease him a little bit, but I had that exact mistake my first time logging onto Opus. I can't tell you how long I spent typing in my email, hitting forgot my password, typing in my email and password, hitting forgot my password, typing in my email again, and then I had to come back a second day before I saw it. It's clearly written there, but if you're like me, you might miss it. So I'd encourage you guys, if you take one thing from this section, really know to add the .kkytbs, because that's going to be one question maybe every brother in your chapter is going to have when they're filling out the chapter personnel report.
Your band director and sponsor will surely ask it, especially because they probably won't log in 3 times a year for this. The other thing I'll say, what Chris said, I do log into Opus a decent amount. I literally try to log into Opus after taking this screenshot and literally could not log in and could not figure it out for 2 to 3 login attempts about it. So maybe I'm just becoming a millennial old man, but your band directors are probably older than me, so the problem's real.
Yeah, so it's a common thing. We're all striving for the highest, and that's one thing for our individual goals. Remember the kky.tbs. So for this next one, quiz time. What are the 4 things needed for the CPR? And I'm going to throw this as an additional question. Could someone remind me what CPR stands for in the chat or coming off mute?
Chapter personnel report.
Great, thank you, Antonia. So what are the 4 things that are needed? And they can be in any order. I see chapter numbers. I see status and graduation year. To submit dues.
There are
Cool,
a bunch
so
of people
let's
clearly
go for it.
Oh no, sign form's also correct. There's a bunch of you who are clearly more familiar with doing this form than I am because status is one of those things that is not on this list, but absolutely yes.
Yeah, so Nick, if you want to do the reveal for these.
Yeah. So acknowledgments from every member, which this is y'all saying it must be signed, must complete the policy. Individuals must log into Opus to complete these. Dues paid. Please pay the dues. Submission of the form. And no one said the last one, I don't think. So what is one more that might be required for this form? Yep, Jonathan got it. Sign off from your DOB and sponsor. They might be the same person, they might be different people. Both people have to approve of this. So sweet.
Great. So now we have some more quizzes for you guys. How would I do the following? How would I update headquarters if, first question, is someone moved from conditional to active? What would be the report you would use? I see CPU, chapter personnel update. Perfect. For the next one, what if they move from conditional to active?
Same question. My fault.
And then for the next one, what if somebody wanted to go alumni early? I see some thinking, and I see some CPU. I see someone says can't, and that is the exact thing. I'm glad to see so many people thinking on it because that was a trick question. There's early alumni status is not a thing. I think that might be the last thing on this slide for our questions.
Nope, there's
Oh,
one more
one more.
question. Hard question.
The chapter place someone on probation or suspension.
This one has not been in the presentation, so
Director of Bands or sponsor submits potentially. Oh, go for it, Nick. You're more familiar with this process than I am.
I am very familiar with this process. If your chapter does, this is in the Constitution, if your chapter does put someone on probation or suspension, you have to email the Vice President for Membership and Expansion, which is Mark Renaud. I'm so glad I don't have to get these emails anymore. And the National Executive Director, which is Dolly O'Neill, with a copy of your chapter minutes where your chapter made the motion, and the motion passed, an explanation of why the status was put on them and the terms associated with that status, and approval from your DOB and sponsor. So yes, your DOB and sponsor has to ultimately approve that. So make sure you talk to them early. But that was my PSA from my time as VPME.
Cool. So on this next slide, this is the next form you'll likely fill out. And as this says on the right side, this might be one of the most important forms that you fill out as a chapter, and it's the membership process paperwork. So it helps us to get a feel for all the great recruitment events that your chapter is about to start in the fall semester or spring semester. And it helps ensure that your events are following the risk management policies of the fraternity. So while you're reading through this great timeline that was put together, I want to remind you that your chapter can't begin these recruitment events until your calendar gets approved. It's not until you submit it, but it's until it's actually approved, giving you the go-ahead to get started. So I strongly encourage you, if you haven't already, to think ahead about submitting your calendar, getting these events put together, so you can submit it as early as possible before the rush of everybody starting classes. That way you don't have to wait for a bunch of approvals before yours gets approved. You can just get started. And if you have any more questions on this, I definitely encourage you, of course, throw them in the chat, and Kristen will do an amazing job of answering them. You can also reach out to Paula Kaiser and Mark Renaud or attend our VP training at the same time, Thursday, August 21st. You'll see me and Kristen there, so come hang out with us again and get a little bit more info about your new position.
I will not be there. It will be my birthday. But this is the slide I was referring to earlier of the whole idea of I've given you all so much personal information. You know my birthday, you know where I went to college. If you can do the math, you know what year I was born. Anyway, if you want to get that initiate on time crown pearl goal, these are all the steps that you have to hit it. You get a crown pearl goal for starting this process with your chapter calendar. And then if you get through the membership candidate registration and all that stuff on time, you'll get the other Crown Pearl as well. Additionally, if there's 5 people on that initiate registration form, you get another Crown Pearl. So this is a very important slide because it can get you 3 of your Crown Pearl goals as a chapter. But yes, please go to the VPM training as well.
So at that VPME training or VP training and here, we'll talk a little bit about the membership registration form. So this is another form that will likely be filled out by your VP or your VPM. So like the CPR, the chapter personnel report, this kind of helps us gain an understanding of who is in your newest class of membership candidates. You'll need to submit this form within 7 days of first degree and have each membership candidate sign on to OPUS. So this is another great thing to maybe do at your first couple times of your Road to Wisdom lesson. After your first one, when you're doing, you're going through that, maybe take 5 minutes, show everyone how to get on OPUS and sign those forms so that you don't have to track people down individually later on. Next, we have the initiate registration form. So this form is due 30 days, within 30 days of third degree, and it records whether or not, or that your membership candidates have now become active brothers. Or it helps us learn a little bit more about why a membership candidate didn't complete the process. And Nick can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think this form was designed to investigate your chapter because one person didn't become an active. we totally understand that people will drop the process for a variety of own reasons that are totally natural to being a college student or figuring out the Kappa Kappa side. It's great for us, but it may not be the perfect organization for them. And that's totally great. This just helps us to understand, to see trends across the country and across the fraternity, to understand maybe if there are things we can do to make Kappa Kappa Psi more inclusive for our entire band community, or if the resources we can give you guys to be as successful as possible. So like the CPR, this form has a late fee, so be sure you're planning ahead to avoid any last minute surprises. And like the CPR, this is one that you have to have every membership candidate or then active brother agree to the forms. So you want to spend a little bit of time thinking ahead and making sure that's done before you get any last minute fees.
Also, Chris answered the question better than I could about why we asked for a reason. We think about wanting to add this to the CPR as well for people going inactive, just because we want data as an organization, right? I've said it multiple times. We want to grow our numbers, so we want to understand why people don't join us or leave us.
And it's another quiz time. So you kind of get the answers here, and that is okay. So pop quiz that has been answered. What are some of the things that every new initiate registration form has to have? And that's the acknowledgements from every new member, the dues being paid, the submission of the calendar, the submission of the form itself, and then a sign off from your sponsor and or director of bands, depending on if that's the same person or somebody different. So next we have ourselves the honorary registration form. So this form is used to collect information about honorary brothers and is due 30 days after the completion of a ritual. So this has the similar requirements of other forms with one change. These honorary brothers don't need to go into OPUS and sign the policy acknowledgements. So that's one step you can save and not have to deal with as you're going through this form. So on to the next slide, we have our officer and chapter update. So I know I've talked about some really exciting reports before, but these truly are, this one and the next one are some of my favorite ones for reasons that you'll see. So this one is the chapter officer and the officer and chapter update form. So this is used to acknowledge the incoming officers to your chapter. It's a chance to recognize your excitement for them becoming officers and to make sure the fraternity knows that as well. So you'll have to do this the same year, membership year as your election. And there are some specific rules in there, but to keep things simple, I'd encourage you maybe to fill it out sometime between the elections themselves and your officer transition ceremony. That way you don't get it wrong and you don't submit in the wrong semester. Now, as of note, you must list every officer, even if there wasn't changes in the people holding the positions. And as a reminder, OPUS requires the following offices to be held: the president, vice president for membership, secretary, treasurer, and alumni/APRO, alumni relations officer. And a president cannot have multiple offices. So just something to think ahead as you guys are going to go into election season, whether it's this semester or next semester. Next, we have another one that I really like, as exciting as forms can be, is the graduating senior report. So this lets you acknowledge the hard work of your brothers who are about to be graduating seniors. And because it kind of follows the graduation schedule, we have the deadlines of December 1st and June 1st to match when they might be graduating. Now, I'd encourage you to have your graduating seniors update their emails. It was even thrown in the chat earlier when Nick was talking to be sure to use maybe a personal email, not a university affiliated email. I know when I started, I used my college email, which it's a great thing to do, and a lot of active brothers will do the same. But every university has their own rules on how long you can keep using that email domain. So it can be a real pain to access OPUS weeks or even years later when you can't reset your password because you don't have access to that email. You'll probably have to reach out to the OPUS team, claim your identity, prove you are who you are, and that's a lot more painful of a process than taking 5 minutes as graduating seniors and just being sure you have the right email on file.
One thing that I will say here that might not make sense is if you want a way for the national organization to pay less to our insurance company, fill out the graduating senior report. We base our insurance estimates based off how many people we had on the CPRs, plus our initiates, minus the GSRs. And so every year it comes in and we have to tell our insurance company that says, okay, like we start every fall out with like 4,000-ish members, a little less, and then we initiate 2,000 members throughout the year, and then we only have 500 people submit the graduating senior report. And so we're telling the insurance company, it's like, to our best estimates, based off our paperwork, we have 5,500 members. We usually will have more people marked as alumni on the chapter personnel reports. And so if we can tell the insurance company we have less people, we get to insure less people. So this is a weird way that we can drive down the costs as an organization. Your random PSA of the day.
And that goes directly to your dues. Insurance is one of the biggest things driving dues up every year. It's most of the people involved in Kappa Kappa Psi are volunteers, with the exception of the national headquarters staff. So very much the thing driving your dues up, driving it, the increase that we recently had is insurance. So you can do your small part and helping be sure dues are cheaper for the people who come after you, or at least don't increase as much as they otherwise would have.
And public disclaimer, I'm a volunteer. I don't get paid a dime for any of this. In fact, I donate to the fraternity. So same with Chris.
We're paying to be up here, even though we're not paid to be up here, if that makes sense. So we have next the fall activity report. So this is the last two were kind of my favorite because it recognizes the hard work that you're doing as brothers and giving kind of that next step of, hey, we're excited for you to be an officer and we're excited for you to be a graduating senior. These next two, I think, are the ones that are most impactful for you and your chapter. So the first one we're going to talk about is the fall activity report. And this is used to record all of your chapter's activities from May 1st to November 1st. So everything you do from service projects to fundraising goals to demographic info about your band, it's going to be asked in this report. Now, the demographic info may take some reaching out to your band office. So I'd encourage you to maybe reach out a little bit earlier to make a plan with them to get information about how to complete the demographics. It asks, for example, how many people are in your concert band program? How many people are in your jazz program? And while you can probably get close reasonably, we want to be sure the numbers are as accurate as possible so that national headquarters can know that. Now, we recommend that you submit your fall activity report to your sponsors for their review before the start of Thanksgiving break. Otherwise, especially with the way Thanksgiving break works out this year, the first day back after Thanksgiving break is Monday, December 1st, which happens to be the due date. So you don't want to put yourself in a position where your sponsor and your director of bands have to remember how to log into OPUS and approve your information in a single day. So the sooner you can submit it, the better you're going to have, and the less stressed out you, your leadership team, and chapter president will feel about this form. For the next one, we have the spring activity report. And this is very much the same thing, but with different dates and different timelines. So it goes from November 1st to May 1st and rounds out the entire year of you all being officers. Now, I really encourage you guys not to take the fall and spring activity reports lightly. These are really great opportunities for your chapter or leadership team to pause, reflect, and go through those strategic planning steps that Nic talked about earlier. It might be a great chance to say, hey, looking at what we did last semester, let's do our SWOT analysis, or let's look at our goals. Did we actually accomplish them? Which ones did we maybe not make as much progress as we would have liked to? And this may not be the purpose of them, but it's kind of a nice cherry on top, is that brothers at the district and national level will use these forms for evaluating awards. So if you feel like you're one of the top chapters or one of the most improved chapters over the biennium, this is a great form where you can sell it to nationals. Instead of spending time saying, hey, we bring water to our rehearsals, which some chapters may say, you could say something a little bit more selling it, like, hey, our brothers filled the water jugs for 30 of our marching band's rehearsals. And because of that, our members were hydrated safely throughout the season. And it let the leadership team, who otherwise would have had to do it, and the band staff focus on things like prepping for a great rehearsal, not lugging jugs across the field. So the first one, the we bring water to rehearsals, is a little bit easier to type, and plenty of chapters will stick to that, and that's okay. But your chapter can really stand out if you spend that time and a little bit of extra effort to take it to the next level and do the longer spiel and really sell it, instead of just, we bring water to rehearsals kind of thing. So on to the next slide. We have some tips and tricks really to just kind of round out this OPUS section. So first one is be sure that at least one brother in your chapter knows how to navigate OPUS. And the biggest issue you're going to have is really that .kkytvs at the end. I know I've said that a bunch, but hopefully it's going to drill in and you'll be ready for it. And when that inevitable question comes up, the 40 plus people on this call will be ready to answer that question. Second one is to learn the deadlines and try and be a little bit ahead of them. So we'll do our best across the fraternity to remind you of those deadlines, and your district leadership will do a great job as well. But we ask you to keep an eye out and kind of meet us halfway and skim through those emails, at least skim through those emails that Nic sends out every month, just to find those deadlines and know which ones that are approaching. It's only going to take you a few minutes, but if you think about the ones that have the forms that have the late fees, you can save hundreds of dollars just by paying attention to one of Nic's emails. And lastly, I'd encourage you to plan ahead about when you're going to complete these forms, especially the fall activity report and the spring activity report. If you do them right, it's probably not going to be a sit down in a 1 hour session and knock them all out. I tried to do that for my first fall activity report the night before our director of bands asked it for it to be due. And I remember I started at 7 p.m. that night. I remember logging off my computer at 5:30 a.m. And that was a rough night, not fun 2 nights before Thanksgiving, but that's how it went. So I'd encourage you guys to give yourself and your sponsor and director of bands plenty of time to review the fall activity report, the spring activity report, and especially the reports that have fees associated with them. That way you can just be on top of everything. And if you do have questions, reach out to some of us or the national headquarters team. They're always around and happy to assist if any questions you may be having. So I'm not sure if this is me again or if I pass it back to Nick. Happy to do whichever one.
I'll just take it so we can close out real quick on all this stuff. So I think first and foremost, I'm going to say this like 20 more times. Thank you all for being on this tonight. It's great to kick off one of the fall chop shops with 40 people helping their chapter, 40 brothers helping their chapters get Crown Pearl goals. I think any speaker for the fraternity, any volunteer will say like it warms our heart and kind of fills our own cups when we have people be involved. So it absolutely means the world on this. That being said, we wanted to call out some resources that we have for your chapter that might help your chapter succeed in a lot of work that your chapter is trying to do. And then some things I'll say at the end of this. So first and foremost, the Founder Circle. If your chapter really wants to focus on leadership development this year, we really suggest the Founder Circle because this focuses on developing our leadership skills and making our brothers just better leaders. And everyone can benefit from leadership training. So we'll really hand this up during the month of February for those Crown Pearl goals and at district conventions. But we just want to remind you all that the Founder Circle itself really focuses on developing leaders at the individual level, the group level, and the visionary level. And that within each level, there's about 5 to 6 modules of content that you can read about to kind of really self-reflect on who you are as a leader. And really, we try to pair a lot of these resources with independent reading and reflection with your programming at district and national conventions. If you do this independent reading and reflection and go to a district and national convention, we will give you a very nice certificate for your level 1 or this year level 2 of the Founder Circle. I also will have little pins made this year. So to the level 1 people, I finally had that design. So you all will get them. And our level 2 people or level 1 new people will get them as well. We have at district conventions, I'm one, Chris is one, our Founder Circle speakers facilitating a bunch of training at these conventions themselves. And really, these are more resources for you all to guide as a chapter. If your chapter wants to focus on CME, which some of y'all said earlier, pull out some of the Founder Circle stuff. Talk about what it means to be an accountable leader. These are resources meant to help you all grow as people who can better tackle the world itself. The next resource, which I hope you all are very familiar with, is The Road to Wisdom. The Road to Wisdom is a thick book, and it has a lot of great activities even beyond The Road to Wisdom that you all can use as a chapter for a lot of your work. It is our national standard for education and the training of membership candidates and active members alike. So please, it's on our policies. Refer to these under membership on kksat.org. Remember that with The Road to Wisdom, the content provided is meant to be what's taught. Things can be added to it to talk about your chapter's history and things like that, but ideally you are still teaching what's in the Road to Wisdom. And you can also do approved activities. If you ask me later, I will tell you about my favorite activity that we did at Ada Beta, which is an approved activity. It was called Chapel Night, and we learned about the 8 values of Virginia Tech. The Road to Wisdom is something that you should make your chapter's own, as well as being part of the fraternity identity with that. And the big thing with the Road to Wisdom, this is a great thing. We encourage your chapters to participate in your membership education program because you might learn something new as you do that as well. The Inner Circle. This is the least utilized resource of the fraternity. It is a great book. There are nearly 200 activities that you can use for continuing membership education and things alike. It is extremely ritual based because we have an amazing ritual as an organization. And it has just a lot of things you can talk through to make you all better brothers. So we highly suggest using the Inner Circle to talk through a lot of these things that you may do as a chapter itself. It's a cornerstone of our ritual education research, but it also teaches you how you can operate as a chapter or how you can deal through conflict and things like that. It has resources depending on the degrees of the ritual. So if you ever want to have a debrief after second degree, which you should do, the Inner Circle will show you how to do that. But it's meant to help you bring the ritual more into your chapter setting. The ritual is not a book that we should only open up for degrees. It's a book that we should open up often. For those people on our district leadership teams, they actually are getting weekly Monday ritual reflection quotes from me because I think this is something that is so important to who we are, because this is what defines how we operate as an organization and how we operate as servant leaders. So please think about incorporating some of these into your chapter, especially if you want to work on that brotherhood aspect. This is a great resource to do that. And just as a note, like, I know we're all very ambitious people. This is not a book that you try to do every year. You pull out new activities to do throughout the year. And then finally, and maybe most importantly, is the chapter resource folder. So I asked our CFRs to collect things into the CRF, because that's not a confusing acronym, to have all these resources in one place. So when we talked about the content calendars, when we talked about all that stuff, a lot of it can be found in the chapter resource folder. We encourage your whole chapter become familiar with this resource. There are folders for the president. There are folders for the vice president. There are folders for the treasurer. There are things that talk about recruitment. There are things that talk about everything in there. Please use this. For your VPM, there are formatted Road to Wisdom slides that you can make copies of and then edit on your own right. Like, this is meant to be a one-stop shop for a lot of your resources. I probably already said all the things under this features information bullet point on, but it also talks about how to become engaged at the district and national level, how to align with our national brand, provides you with officer training, and how to foster wellness within your chapter. So this one, hugely important. I would call it out a lot. So we have done it. We have finally reached the end of this talk. Like I said, it wouldn't take 2 hours. I will say this multiple times. I love Kappa Kappa Psi because we're an active centered organization. Because if you ever talk to me in Arupa, we will both say, like, the work of Kappa Kappa Psi is not done by the National Council. It's done by each and every one of you on your college campuses, especially now as band gets into season and as we start to do like the true work of our organization. So to each and every one of you, thank you for the work that you will do on your local campuses to advance the college band movement. And thank you for the local work you do on your campuses to advance your brothers and yourself as a chapter. A huge congratulations to you all for earning a Crown Pearl goal for your chapter. And I hope that you found this useful, and I hope you will consider showing up to things such as our president's training next week, our VPM training, our treasurer training, our service chair training, our communicators training as well. These are all great opportunities. We don't get on the line because we like to hear ourselves talk. We get on the lines. We hope that we're providing you all the resources you need to succeed and thrive. So I will stay around on this. We will stop the recording. Great. It stopped when I just stopped the screen share. So please, if you have any questions, I'll stay around for about 10 or so minutes before I start getting yelled at by my partner for not having dinner ready. Otherwise, thank you all so much for showing up and have a great night, and congratulations on getting your first Crown Point goal.